Hello and welcome to today's Delta Credit Tip. So you pull your credit and your credit score is a 0. What do you do now? Well, stay tuned. We're going to fill you in and get some numbers in front of that 0 right here on today's Delta Credit Tip. Hello and welcome back to today's Delta Credit Tip. I'm Michael Holmes of Delta Credit Restoration, bringing you more information to help you in your credit restoration process. It's actually, today we're talking about credit building, all right? And hopefully you find this information helpful. If so, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell so that every week as we come out with more stuff to help you fix your credit, you get it right away, all right? But today we're actually talking about building credit. So you pull your credit, you don't have an 800 score, you don't have a 700 score, you don't even have a 400 score. You got a goose egg, you got a straight 0. And the question becomes, well, how do I fix this? How do I get a number so I can go get loans and do all these things that I want to do? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over 3 ways that we recommend you do it. And also we're going to give you some tidbits on the back end, so stay tuned for that. All right. So let's first start talking about why you've got this goose egg, right? There's 2 reasons. Either A, you've never established any kind of lending relationship, or B, you've never maintained one, right? It's been so long since you've had any kind of lending relationship that the score has kind of reset itself. And you may find that you have actually collection accounts on your credit report. Like maybe you went to the hospital and there's a collection account on there, but you still don't have a score because that's not actually established credit. That's established debt, right? So typically that's why you're going to have a 0. You just simply haven't established it yet. So the question becomes, well, how do I establish credit? Because to get credit requires credit. Right? So that big conundrum. So what you can do is you can go to the bank and get a loan, right? You can go get a car. That we don't recommend. The main reason why we don't recommend you building your credit with a loan is, 1, it's super costly, right? Because a loan is designed to last for a certain amount of time. And that entire time that you have that relationship, you're paying interest. And so you don't really have to have debt to have credit. So we don't usually recommend building it with a loan. What we do recommend is you start building it with revolving credit or credit cards. And there's 3 ways you can do that. The first way is to simply go apply. But again, not having credit and trying to establish credit makes it very difficult to do. So what you may want to do is start going to places that you do have relationships with, like your bank, and sit down, talk to a personal banker, or call a credit card company like Capital One or Discover or one of these major companies and tell them your situation. There are a lot of credit cards specifically designed for people with a 0 credit score. There's student credit cards, there's starter credit cards, and so what's happened with these cards is they've dummied down or they've minimized the underwriting requirements that would qualify you for the card. So it just increases the probability that you do get approved. However, it's still unlikely with a 0 score, okay? So going for just a regular credit card may not produce the results you're looking for. Then we go to option number 2. So in option number 2, you get what they call a secured credit card. Now, the difference between a regular credit card and a secured credit card is that the secured credit card requires collateral. In other words, you're putting something up that they're going to hold on to just in case you don't pay. Okay? Now, if you really want the ins and outs of how a secured credit card works, we do have a video on that, and we go on to explain, well, what is your responsibility as an of the card, and what is your responsibility towards your deposit, and the bank's responsibility towards your deposit. So you want to watch that video and take a look at that, especially if you don't understand how a secured card works. But basically, it's like when you buy a car. If you don't pay that car, they're going to come take the car, right? Why? Because the car is the collateral, right? And you don't pay, they take the car. Well, in this case, you give them a deposit up front. They give you a credit card equivalent or closely equivalent to the card. And then if you don't pay on time, they take your deposit. Okay? That minimizes the risk of the lender and makes it more likely that you're going to get approved. But it's not guaranteed. There is still the possibility that they decline you even with your deposit, which sounds crazy, but remember, they're in it for the money. So if they can give you a late fee or an over limit fee or something along those lines, they're going to do it, and that could increase what you owe to be more than the limit of your card. And that's where the deposit sometimes has a problem in covering that debt. And as a result, you can still get declined for that credit card. Okay. But now let's talk about option number 3. And this is probably the easiest, most guaranteed way that you can actually establish credit without being declined. And that's becoming an authorized user. Okay. So to be an authorized user means that you are simply a signer on someone else's account. So this requires someone that kind of trusts you a little bit. But again, we've got a video on how authorized user cards work and the liability that you and the original card holder assumes when they place you on that card, and how you can maybe minimize that feeling of risk. Okay. But the way an authorized user card works is you simply talk to someone who has established credit with whatever credit card company, and you ask to be placed as an authorized user. In other words, you can use that account. So that's a guaranteed. By law, they're going to have to start reporting that on your credit report, and that would be enough to start establishing a credit score, at least one long enough for you to go get your own, right? And then maybe you can get yourself off that person's card if they're not 100% comfortable with you staying on that card. But an authorized user is by far the easiest, most guaranteed way to establish credit. However, be forewarned, you want to kind of screen who you're asking, okay? If they aren't paying the credit card on time, if they aren't using the credit card, or if their balances are really high on the card, and in other words, if they've got a balance that exceeds 30% of the limit on that card, you don't want to be on that card. Okay, so make sure you don't get on just anybody's card. Make sure you get on somebody's card who's performed well. Okay, and also make sure you get on somebody's card that you know. There is the opportunity to go out there and buy trade lines. In other words, you can pay a complete stranger to put their credit information on your credit report. And it works just like being an authorized user. But if you get a loan with that strategy and somehow the underwriter finds out, then they can consider that loan fraud. So you really want to do it the old-fashioned way. Like Mom says, you do it right the first time, you're going to spend a whole lot less time on the back end trying to clean up the mess you created. So let's just do this the right way. All right? But I want to kind of go into why, again, you would have had a 0 score, even with the presence of derogatory items on your credit report. And the reason why bad credit won't lead to a credit score is because it requires activity in the quadrants that actually create your score. If, for instance, you have a bunch of student loans on your credit report and you're not paying it, it's not really contributing anything positive to your credit report because there's no activity. So lack of activity creates lack of score. So you can have derogatory stuff on there and still not have a score, but you need something positive on there to establish a score. So simply establishing an account won't be enough long term. Once you establish credit, you need to use that credit, have payment activity. You don't have to keep a balance. You can pay a credit card off at the end of the month and the interest rate is zero. That's what I'm saying. It's free, right? You don't have to get a loan. You don't have to have debt to do it. But there's a good way and a better way to do it, and doing it with revolving debt is the better way, okay? So hopefully this information helps. If so, again, give us that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell so that every week as we come out with more information to help you establish, build, and do what you want to do with that credit, stay tuned and we'll give you as much information as we can. And hopefully it'll help you make a choice, make a change, Delta.